Denial of human-induced climate change is alive and kicking in diverse contexts across the world. Climate change deniers ignore scientific consensus and refuse to work towards the solutions we urgently need. Quality education plays a key role in making sure our students are informed and can think critically about the information that surrounds them. And so now we're joined by Michelle Codrington Rogers, citizenship teacher and ex-president of the Teachers Union, NASUWT, who is with us from her school in Oxford. We also welcome Kathy Dorman, a science teacher from the American Federation of Teachers who is in Colorado, and Fatima Cliede from CNTE, who is in Brazil and will be speaking to us in Portuguese. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to start first with Kathy, who joins us. I don't even think that the sun is up where you are, so thank you so much for getting up so early. As a science teacher, how do you address the issue of fake news, for instance, of climate change denialism with your students?
Well, thank you for having me here. And yeah, it is 6 o'clock in the morning, so the sun is not up in Colorado. This is an interesting topic. There really is a scope and a sequence that teachers need to implement to engage their students in this conversation. And so the very first thing that I do early in a school year is talk about the nature of science with students. And I hope that they gain an understanding of where science falls in the realm of information. And so we talk about how it's consistent. You look at observable phenomena. It's in the natural world. It is predictable. It's testable. And it's tentative. And that idea of being tentative, that things change when we get new information. So if you lay the background, then you get into the discussion of this idea of fake news and misinformation. And we're seeing more and more of this. I've been an educator for 37 years. And so with the onset of all the social media access that kids have, what we're seeing is more and more misinformation and fake news be sent out there on the air, and kids are getting a lot of that. So after they understand the nature of science, then we can start asking, okay, let's take a look at this report or whatever it is, a statement that someone makes, and let's analyze it. So you get kids to use their critical thinking skills. And really what that involves is we want to look at what we call a claim. What is this piece of information claiming? And then look for the evidence that supports that claim, and then use critical thinking skills to reason through it and see if there really is evidence in existence that allows us to believe this thing to be true. So I'm not going to stand in front of my classroom and say, well, no, that's just fake news. I want them to draw that conclusion themselves.
Interesting.
I was just going to add one more thing, and that is, and we can talk more about this later, but one thing that teachers need are reliable resources to help them, create these lessons. And that is a problem. Not every science teacher necessarily has access to reliable information that they can use.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and we can certainly go back to that. I wanted to turn to Michelle now, and educating about the climate crisis can be viewed as political and therefore controversial, especially when it explores the intersections of climate change and social justice, and where it includes discussion of global power imbalances or promotes civic action. Now, what can teachers do to navigate this?
Thank you, Patricia, and I apologise for my office being so messy. And if any students pop their heads up behind me, again, I do apologise. I think
You're fine.
it's absolutely crucial that we understand that everything is political, and education is no different. I teach citizenship, and I'm proud to teach citizenship. And I say to my students at the beginning of every year, my job is to create professional troublemakers, because education is always about preparing the next generation for the world as it should be, not just as it is. And so we need to, as teachers, recognize that we are activists, whether we teach maths, whether we teach science, whether we teach geography, whether we teach citizenship, whether we teach personal social health education. What we're trying to do is to create the next citizens for this world. And so teachers have to recognize that we do have a place as activists, and it's not something we should be scared of, because what we're trying to do is to not just impart information, but also, I would hope, we want to create people who want to make the world better. And so it's really important that as teachers and as educators, we understand that we are grounded in our communities. So whether it's local, whether it's national or global, which is why summits like today is phenomenal, that actually we recognize that we are part of a system, which means that we're trying to prepare the world for as it needs to be after we leave the classroom. But it's also about us making sure that we work not just with each other, but that actually we work and we connect with civil society, and we connect with organizations that are already doing this work, so that when our students are hearing this information, they're not just hearing it from us, they can see that it's part of something bigger. And that's where that intersectional approach to social justice has to be embraced, because for all of our students, they are sitting in front of us with lots of different hats and identities, and we have to make the world relevant to them. And by engaging with organization and campaign groups that are already doing the work, that's where we are able, not just as trade unions, but also as teachers, to amplify their voices rather than take over their campaigns. So it's phenomenal hearing about what's happening in other countries around the world, because what we do here impacts on each other. And so that's where, as teachers, we have got that ability to create those links.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for those comments. Le quería preguntar a usted, Fátima, en Brasil.
I'd like to ask you, Fátima, about Brazil, especially right now with the government of Bolsonaro.
Existe uma grande
There is a
tendência de
very big trend
negacionistas. Como é que
towards
tal
the
tem
denial of climate
efetuado,
change.
como
Can
é
you
que tem
please
afetado o seu
explain to
trabalho e
me
a sua
how
luta?
this is affecting your work and the
Hello.
fight that you are
I'm delighted to be here with you all, sharing with you all, Patricia, at this table on behalf of CNTA Brazil. I speak from the Amazonia. I'm in Porto Velho, Rondônia, in the north of Brazil. I'm a worker and the public servants. I was a member of parliament of the Republic, and now I work at the school in the suburbs of the city. And at this moment here in Brazil, we are facing a huge difficulty. We deal with current fascism from Bolsonaro government. It's an extremely violent government, violent with the environment, violent with the human rights, and above all, with the poorest people, with the most vulnerable ones. They suffer the action of the state. For us, the huge difficulty lies on not only having work, this is imposed on our lives. This violent government promotes hate. And there are a huge number of death tolls in the city. They are killing the Amazonia. They are killing the native peoples, the indigenous people. The deforestation in 2019 in Amazonia was equivalent to 9,000 square meters. They actually disappeared. And with them also disappeared the populations, the indigenous, those that understand the forest. We cannot deal with our work only by looking at what that's happening. We Everything is interconnected, as Pope Francis has mentioned. Everything is interconnected, as he mentioned in 2015. This needs to be updated in terms of the action we exert. So I greet the campaign from EI. They call upon us to teach the planet as a whole. At the forest, there are people, we have trees. Here in Brazil, Bolsonaro's fascism, with all their violence, promotes not only the trees' death, but also the death of the poor. This week we celebrate the week of indigenous people, the very same peoples. And here in my state, we aim at obtaining the investigation on the part of the police about the death of an indigenous teacher. And this has been, we have been highly invaded by threats. A lot of invaders, workers from the wood industry. Up to now, we have not obtained no investigation on this crime. So for us to defend Amazonia, to defend the environment, it is more than a simple action as ecological activists. It is our duty, the duty of a people. So I agree. I want to salute this decision on the part of EI in launching this campaign. It meets our needs, and we can then continue to fight, believing on behalf of life. That is very important. It brings what Paulo Freire, our main patron, education patron, brought to us. It is necessary to act. We have to pray and to supervise. Simultaneously, we know that we need to take care of the planet, but we also need to teach that the fact that the planet is ourselves, the trees, the human beings, the animals, the forests, and the peoples who live in there. We need our common ground to serve us all. So from Brazil, our fight at this stage is to remove this government. They are ecocides and genocides. This lack of action in terms of the pandemic is also a result of the way we perform on the environment, isn't it? Our planet suffers daily threats that come not only from climate change, and even species that actually disappear. So this government is ecocide and genocide. So also indigenous peoples are also disappearing. Old indigenous people, it's part of their culture that was not conveyed to youngsters.
Muchas gracias, Fatima. Michelle, Fatima was talking about the situation in her country with a government that is definitely not doing very much for climate change. So in today's post-truth context, what is the role of civics and critical thinking skills in ensuring that students leave school climate literate, so that when you're in a country or wherever you live, that you're able to look at the facts and know what to do?
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Fatima and Kathy. Those are excellent interventions. And I think all of us together are very much saying the same thing, that actually we need to make sure that our politicians are listening. I think I'm quite fortunate in the UK because we've got David Attenborough, and all of our students know the campaigns, especially around plastics. And it means that when it comes to talking about it in schools, our students already know. Our students are already plugged in. And especially being a country that still has links to other parts of the world, thanks to the colonization and empire. And let's not forget, that's how Britain got rich. So let's talk about the history and the impact on the environment and social justice in relation to that. But actually, a lot of our work gets already done because our students are listening to it thanks to an extent to the BBC, because we trust, and I use the word trust, the BBC as a voice piece of our nation, of our society. But it also means that when our students are engaging with campaigns that are already widely understood, it means that in schools we're able to enhance it, and it's really crucial that we're creating that space where students are able to develop their voices, where they can use those voices to add to the pressure, add to the kind of the pushing to get the government to do the right thing. But we are still always fighting back against the fake news because our students are engaging in the global sphere, the global debates and discussions, and we can't control the internet. As much as we would like to, we can't control it. So it's really important that we're teaching children and young people to be critical thinkers. I think it was Kathy who said about the importance of critical thinking, because if we go by what the governments want us to teach, our children and young people will be taught how to be good workers, how to build the economy, but not how to think, and not how to challenge, and not how to take control back and be empowered. So as schools, we have got that responsibility from the moment they arrive in school in the UK at 5 and 4, for us to start teaching them the power of having that voice, but also making people listen. And if it means doing it en masse, then there's that critical mass of putting pressure on, but also Greta Thunberg, a lot of our children really do look up to her at whatever age. She has shown that you can be the lone voice and you can push and people will listen. And I think it's crucial for us to teach children and young people how to be heard within big P politics, but also small P politics as well, and working with others of the similar campaign groups.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good point, Michelle. And I wanted to sort of ask the same thing to you, Kathy. Now, how is your teaching and how have your students changed since you started your work?
What a fun question. In 1984, when I started, we didn't talk about this. We talked about the greenhouse effect. We were talking about the science of why, we can live on this beautiful planet. It's temperature controlled and it's the perfect place in space. And it really wasn't until I would say later in the 1990s that we started looking and seeing that we were warming it up. And so that certainly has been a change. Now, one thing that I really try to do is instill a sense of empathy in my students. It's it's not just about them. It's got to be about us as a whole, that interconnectedness that we've been talking about. And so that empathy is really important. But the other part is hope. We don't want to be so dismal about everything that they just feel that they can't change something. So they need to feel empowered. They need to feel like they can make a difference and that we can all work together. So being hopeful, I think, and optimistic, is really, really important, that we can change.
Okay, great. Y Fátima, una pregunta de seguimiento y tenemos muy poco tiempo.
Fátima, and I also have a follow-up question. We're running out of time. Can you explain
what is the key for you as an educator to work when part of the population and when the government is part of the problem? I believe we work on behalf of the students. Knowledge is releasing. We need to convey knowledge on threats over the planet. We need to rally society, and we need to claim from the government. Here in Brazil, for example, we have built a national plan of education with the engagement of all society represented by all parts of society and all involved in the curriculum. This foresees environmental cross-cutting education, and it takes long to change this reality. Yet, in our country, that is not happening because deniers in the government, they are in denial. They don't let teaching to be of the utmost quality in this regard. That's so we aim at changing. So there, as a member of parliament that I previously was, there was a law in 2008 that forces us to teach the indigenous people. That is not being enforced. The government is in denial. There are biased judgments all over against black people, against the indigenous peoples. So, but we have this hope that with all the world campaigns, with world pressure, maybe we can modify this. The Brazilian people has woken up. We need to pressure Bolsonaro's government so that we can start a civilizing procedure in this country. The key lies in education. As Paulo Freire put it, education transforms people, and people transform the world.
Thank you so much, Fatima, Kathy, and Michelle, for your very compelling insights on a topic that we could spend hours and hours on. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but the takeaway is basically, you know, more education and more involvement. And I want to thank you so much for getting up early, Kathy, in Colorado. And so thank you so much. Muchas gracias, Fatima. Thank you, Michelle. And keep on teaching the students. I want to thank you very much.